Guys, Marianne again. Session 3, I want to speak around the concept of conflict handling, and especially in trying times and difficult circumstances or situations, and especially situations where you yourself feel a little threatened or aggravated or even angry. Then dealing with a conversation that is difficult and even conflicting becomes very challenging. So I want to assist you with a few tips in this session on how to handle conflict in a much more healthier way. Yet I would really recommend you watching session 1 and then session 2 on this feed before you actually really get into the session 3. Why I say that is conflict is like a test almost, and often conflict is handled much better if we have gone through some understanding of our thinking and understanding why certain situations elicit certain emotions within us. So if we have that understanding, we understand what about a certain situation makes you feel so threatened or fearful or aggravated or angry. We have a better understanding what is the thinking happening, what is the belief or perceptions are hold behind at the almost like backstage or behind the scenes, and what are the needs that I feel is not being met. And that helps me understand how and why I want to respond in the way I do. And if I can get that kind of awareness, that helps me to manage myself in a situation much better. So I respond from who I am and who I want to be, because remember, who I am and how I behave teach other people who I am. So people cannot read our minds. So if we want people to know us in a certain way, especially if in an authentic way, we need to respond from who we are, and from a rational and truthful point of who we are, an authentic point. Because otherwise people will sometimes see something in me and sometimes see something else in me, and guess what? That is what they're going to learn from you. That's how they are going to learn who you are. So they're not really getting the real you. They're getting the behaved you or the coping you. So and if that is not the person we want to portray, I would really urge you and suggest you starting to have an understanding of what's happening inside of you. So a little bit of that is looked at in session 1, and another little bit of that is looked at in session 2. But please, there's so much more around these topics, and I want you are welcome to engage with me, contact me if you want more and have a conversation around this, as I am a life coach and I can assist you with having that kind of understanding. So now, with moving into the conflict handling, I want to show you here on the board, I have written down 4 steps as to what will make managing conflict healthier. So that's the key point. It's healthier, not perfect. Especially no conflict conversation or difficult conversation is ever perfect. Nobody can keep absolutely calm ever at any given point. What we can aim for is to have a healthy understanding what's happening for me, and try to converse with the person in a healthy way by also understanding what is happening for them. So the key is to not only speak what's happening for me, but to try and listen what is happening for the other person. And that is usually what is difficult. When we start feeling threatened, our minds become so full because there's a physical reason for that. Our body actually feels it is in a survival mode. So the area of our brain that gets activated when we feel threatened is called the amygdala, and it is responsible for our fight or flight response. And if that is pushed to our limits, we even get into a freeze response where we completely shut down, disassociate and numb ourselves, which is quite an unhealthy space to get into. And unfortunately, often people get there themselves. And if we attempt conflict in that stage, it's not going to turn out very healthy. So we want to mostly that internal understanding is key. But let me show you this 4 steps again. So first things first, we want to, if you have the time before you have a difficult conversation with somebody, to go through this by yourself first. So I've taken these 4 steps from a concept called non-violent communication. Yes, because often conflict or communication becomes violent when we feel threatened. So our aim is for healthy, it's non-violent. So it just means that we are trying to stay calm and have a healthy understanding of the other person's point of view, and have a healthy and calm sharing of my point of view, so that we can get to a combined space of how to move forward. So, but what would be ideal is if you can go through this firstly by yourself, having almost like a self-talk, a conversation with yourself before you engage with a person that you feel might end up in a conflict or a difficult conversation. So how does this work? By yourself first. You're by yourself now. So you're talking with yourself through this triggering situation. For, say for instance, somebody is not really listening thoroughly. So they might be busy on their phone constantly, or they might look at you, but you know they're not really hearing you. You don't feel that they are hearing what you're saying, and they are just continuing with an X behavior that is either making you angry or hurting you. So either way, you want to address that. You want to assert to this person that this kind of behavior, whether they are doing something or saying something, is not helpful to you. It's hurting or aggravating. And the thing here, it's quite a challenge, because we are not wanting to go into the conversation telling them that they're to blame, that their behavior is off and they need to stop it for the conflict to be done and for your feeling to be gone. That's unfortunately not how it's going to go down. So if ever you feel that that is your focus, that is what you want out of a conversation, don't go into that conversation. Because if your focus is on changing the other person, it's not going to happen. So the thing is, we cannot change anybody. We cannot change another person. So if ever that is your focus or your desire for an outcome, so if you think the result is if that person changed, then everything will be fine, that is going to create resistance. And that is going to create a massive amount of conflict if one pushes that onto another person. So if that is your space, it might not be the best time for you to have that conversation with the person. So the thing is, it doesn't mean that we cannot say or assert that their behavior is not what we like, but it's unfortunately, we cannot tell them how they need to behave in order for me to feel better. Just, because life isn't about how I feel or about my needs getting met. Especially if we're in relationships, it is equally about both. So this model, these 4 steps, helps us to get to the equally about both. So let me help you by yourself first. Number 1, we want to observe the situation. What actually happened? So this observation stage is like a video camera recording it. So it is looking at somebody. You want to think about yourself. Okay, this person, I'm wanting to share something with them, but they are distracted. They either look at their phone or they just chip in and say something, and then want to change the topic or however and that is what makes you feel upset or not heard or aggravated. So that is the observation. What is the observation? The observation is when this person gets distracted by either changing the topic, looking at their phone, or even getting up and do something different, that is the observation. That is the only thing. When you get distracted, or when you get up, when you look at your phone, or it's not about you shutting off or you not listening to me, we cannot start. So let me explain why we can't start our conversations or even our own mental thinking around this conversation like that, because it is an interpretation. So when I say that you do not listen to me, or you do not know how I feel, or you are upsetting me and you don't care. You just look at your phone and you don't care. If we start conversations like that, it immediately causes the person to feel offended and attacked, so they feel a need to defend themselves. So, and another thing is that can be factually untrue. So, because it is our interpretation. So because I'm purely assuming that that person do not care, that person am not hearing me, and I'm assuming those things. It might be that they do care and they do hear you. It's just they are a little bit unfocused, etc., etc. The fact is that you want to let them know that their unfocusedness is not working for you or hurting you. Yet we cannot say that when you don't care about me. We cannot start our conversations like that, because we are assuming, firstly, it's not factually true, and secondly, you are gonna make it aggravated. So you're gonna cause that other person to want to defend. And just understanding neurologically, we don't want to create that kind of environment, because that just triggers the amygdala. Remember, I talked about the amygdala earlier. The moment we say things like that, we push our perception onto somebody else, our interpretation onto somebody else. That person immediately feels threatened and feel they want to defend themselves and feel they want to say, but you're wrong, that's not what I'm saying. And we don't want to have conversations in that threatened response. So we want to start the conversation with, when you look at your phone, we want to move to this second stage, I feel. So we want to think about what, by ourselves first, what am I truly feeling? This is the time by yourself where you can really go vulnerably deep with this. So just remember, depending on the relationship later on, when you have the conversation with that person, you don't have to go this deep like you go by yourself. It depends on the relationship, okay? So first, by yourself, thinking on when this person look at their phone while I'm having a conversation with them, or they start speaking about something else, I feel hurt, neglected, disrespected, not valuable, okay? So to have empathy, that's called empathy. It's expressing, it's validating, and it's acknowledging what you are feeling. And that is a very healthy habit. So I want to encourage you to start empathizing, start acknowledging and validating what you are feeling. It's not as if you are, when we say we are acknowledging, expressing and validating emotions, it doesn't mean we get stuck in them. And it doesn't mean we now say we should live out of them. No, it's like acknowledging them so that they can run their course. Emotions is a chemical reaction. Yes, it is a chemical reaction that just needs to run its course through our body. And if we don't understand where they come from, we just behave out of our emotions, and we make our emotions the leader of our behavior, which is not the wisest thing to do. So my session 1 helps us to understand how to not make the emotions the leader, but to have an understanding of our thinking, which should be our leader. Okay, so now that we have addressed by ourselves and empathized our feeling, we want to go to, so I'm feeling neglected, hurt, not valued, so we want to understand, so what is the need? What am I needing here? So I'm needing to feel heard. I'm needing to feel a sense of belonging, of even affirmation or acceptance. That is all the needs. It's basic human needs, guys. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. And it's to validate it for yourself. It's to express it, to actually be able to say, you know what, that is what I need. I need to have that experience of belonging, of affirmation. And so that is what lacks for me. That is what I lose or feel that I'm not getting my need met when that person behaves in their distracted ways. looking at the phone or starting to speak about something else. So immediately I feel not affirmed, neglected. The needs of affirmation, belonging gets lost. And that is what you actually want to be able to say to that person. Okay. And then the fourth step. So I'll get to, how the conversation can go down with somebody else. I'll get to that now. But while you're still by yourself, to get to the fourth stage, to have an understanding that now that you have validated, especially your feelings and your needs after the observation, you can see there's a line that is drawn. It's just a pause. It's understanding that at this point, when you have the conversation with somebody else, you want to ask the person, you're stopping. That's what the line is for. It's a stop sign. It's saying, okay, stop. You now have shared. Let the other person now share what they feel and need before we go into requesting. But by yourself, you want to understand, what am I going to request? What is it that I am requesting? That I believe is not an expectation of them changing, but what is the requesting that I can have so that we can brainstorm how we can get our needs met and not our feelings hurt. So that's what we want to request. That's what requesting is about. So in my case, it might be that I want to request in saying, you know what, how can we, or saying, I have a need to engage without distraction. How can we move forward? Can we perhaps leave the phones or have a focused moment where I can share something with you? Or even I can request, what can I say, something like, can we get a word or something that allows the person to know this is almost like this is an emergency. This person wants to engage now, so that the other person understand, okay, this is serious now. I'm going to put my phone down, or I'm going to try to listen well. So we can request those kind of things. It's almost like a word we can say, okay, hello, pause, can you focus? Can we focus? Okay, so whatever, think about what is it that you want to request, you feel will make your needs feel met. So when we go into a conversation, is to remember again, don't go into the conversation wanting to change the other person, and this is sometimes difficult because our perceptions of the reality I'm creating is so overtaken by how we feel about the situation in that moment that we think that is the reality. But in actual fact, we need to, like in my session 1, we need to regroup, understand what is really happening for me, so that I go into the conversation not having an expectation of this person just going to act in a different way to get my needs met, but going into the conversation having an expectation to hear each other, and that is the key. So we want to have a non-threatening conversation. So we can start off with, John, when I tell you something about what happened in my day, and you get a notice on your phone and you look at it, and you get distracted in that way, I really feel upset and even hurt, as I really need that connection, engagement, as I feel I've got something strong I want to share, and i.e. this is the place where we pause. This is the line, and when we then say, okay, John, so how do you see it? What's happening for you? And then you keep quiet. Okay, this is the time where you allow the other person to also say, what are they seeing, how are they feeling, and what are they actually needing. And this is the place where the self-awareness and self-management really comes into play, because we're now going to have to listen and hear what somebody else is saying, and we might not like it because it might not add up to getting our needs met, because their needs are now perhaps presenting, and it might differ from ours. So this is where we need to keep calm, because at this place, if we don't stay calm here and allow this person to share, and then us going into requesting, it becomes like a tennis game. Because now the person says, yeah, well, you also look at your phone. Or they say, sure, I didn't know it was so important to you. You can just tell me that it was important. So if their responses are becoming to sound like that, it's very tempting for us now to start playing this tennis game of saying, yeah, but you do it more. Or I'm not always on my phone, you are. So it becomes this tit for tat almost, and it's not a very healthy way of dealing with conflict. So you want to allow this person to share how they're feeling. And even if they are used to and going to go into this tit for tat, please guys, remain calm. So stay back, stay on your side of the net, and not go around and play the ball for them. Just stay on your side, allow them to say and how they feel and what they need. If they don't understand what you're doing, you can even ask them, so what are you needing, or what are you feeling in this situation? And you can even validate it and say thank you for sharing how you're feeling. And then you move into the fourth part. So both of us had a chance to say how we felt and what we need. And now we can request. So I can say, okay, thank you that you've shared. So how can we move forward? How can we do this differently? Is there something you want to request for us to do this differently? So questions, what does a question do? The question allows somebody to think for themselves, right? That's exactly what you want somebody to do. Why? Because if you look at session number 2 with regards to taking empathic ownership of our life, is it helps us take ownership. Because if somebody comes up with their own answer, their own idea of something, they are more bought in to actually finish it and actually behave in that way because it's what they said. They feel a sense of responsibility to act on what they said they will do. Because if we start demanding and telling, you will put your phone down if I speak to you, or you will not look at your phone if I am wanting to share something with you. If people start hearing those kind of requests, that's not a request, that's a demand. People immediately go into a defense and they want to attack or defend, and that's not going to be helpful. So this is the time to really ask questions. That is what a request is. It's asking questions, because remember, it is not only helping the other person think for themselves, it's helping you get what you want. Because the more the other person say what they will do, the more they will be responsible for doing it, and actually the more you will get what you want. Okay, so we can say, okay, so how do you want to move forward, John? And he might say, okay, well, I can probably just put my phone down, or we can go to another room and just speak. Or I can say, would it help you if I tell you that I've got really something important to share with you now? They would say yes, because I can't smell when you want to share something important. And then you're like, cool, so we can have cues when I want to share something important to you. And yeah, so that's the kind of requests I'm talking about. So it's not about using perfect words or not, be scared of saying something wrong. It's not about that, because then we don't want to have that kind of conversations, because the pressure is so intense. It's just about staying away from enforcing, demanding what we want from somebody else, and trying to enforce that. And it's staying away from just putting our interpretation or our perception of what's happening out there, and allowing somebody else to give their perception or their interpretation of what happened as well. Because often when you hear somebody else's true interpretation of what they thought happened, it's completely different. Often it's completely different as to what you thought they were doing to you. When in actual fact they weren't. Remember, people behave from how they are perceiving the reality, not from who you are. Yes, we have an influence, but most of the time we behave out of our internal workings. It's just because that's how our brain works. Our brain makes judgments on what is happening around us. That's what the frame of reference in our brain does. So it constantly makes judgments and perceptions as to what is happening around us in order for us to create reality, in order for us and our brain, our cortex, to know how to behave. So we know that's neurologically proven, that is why we behave in certain ways. So remember that. Remember, people are behaving from what they are perceiving is happening, and often if they feel threatened or if they need or feel a lack of need, they are doing the best with the upset or the threat that they are experiencing. So it's also, let's have some empathy, let's allow other people to also feel and need stuff, and not us only ourselves. And let's request a little bit of each other. Let's ask questions for each other instead of demanding, so that we can start hearing each other, and that other people can start hearing themselves as well. Let's be an influence so that people can hear themselves, and we can really start sharing authentically and calmly with each other. So I hope this helps you. I want to encourage you to go and reflect on these 4 steps and try and practice it. Remember, practice really helps us. The more we do it, the better we become at it. And that's just how our brain works. That's how we learn. Just the last thing, the more we do something, the better we become at it. So let me just, give you an example. Like, all of us started driving. We couldn't drive, so we all had to learn that clutch control thing. So eventually we had to we become more competent at it. So at the beginning we're unaware and incompetent, and then all of a sudden we become aware and incompetent, and that's usually a stressful situation because we're aware that we're incompetent. That's when we lose the clutch control and the car shuts down, etc. But then as we practice, we become consciously competent, and we're thinking, hey, I can do this. Wow, I'm driving, I can look, and I can stop, and I can drive smoothly. And then all of a sudden we become unconsciously competent. That's when we drive to the shop or drive home and we didn't even know how we got there. So that's how our brain learns. So remember, the more you practice this, even in conflict, the more you practice this kind of conversing or behaving, the better you will become at it. So let me know how it went in a comment, or engage with me. I would really love to hear how that went. Thanks.